Well, good morning to everybody, and I thought I'd kind of introduce and thank Representative Doug Blex and Senator Bruce Gibbons for coming out to our community today. Glad we could host it here at Flinthills. And again, thank you, and thank you to all of you for coming out here. And I thought maybe we just kind of, I don't know if you had a format or anything, but I thought I'd just kind of open it up and say, going into the veto session here starting on Monday, maybe if you could each talk about your crystal ball predictions as to what you see happening, at least that might give us a place to work from. Thank you.
Well, I'll start. I guess I go back tomorrow. There's like 46 freshmen in the House, and we have actually, I felt, worked really well together across both party sides. And this freshman caucus will actually be Republicans and Democrats that we're going to meet. And we'll be talking about probably the main thing will be the school issue and that new bill that looks reasonably favorable for at least most parties.
2410.
Yeah, 2410. And I hope that I have 10 districts, 10 school districts in my in-house District 12. And if I actually count Coffeyville, which is part of the district, actually not the school is in my district, but Independence High School is. And every one under the new proposal of 2410 will gain some funding with the exception of Dexter and Blueston. So I've been approached by those two particular school superintendents that maybe try to, this first year, to hold harmless, which would be about another $12 million, those ones that are impacted. I doubt that, I don't know, I doubt that will happen because most of them felt with the additional $200 they'll get the next year, that would bring them out of any financial institution or problems with it. Dexter is, it will really hurt them. Blue Stem can probably absorb it. So we got Gary County with Fort Riley, and they're like, what, $3 or $4 million difference in funding because of that transition of military folks in and out. So obviously, we don't know how it's going to come out with amendments on it. Seems to be favorable. I do hope that the $200 increase in aid for the next 5 years will hopefully maybe send a message to the court that at least we're sincere. I don't know. I mean, of course, obviously you're not sincere if you don't fund it. So a huge issue. I'm a pretty strict constitutionalist, and I believe very much in the rule of law. I believe the schools could do a lot better sometimes than what they actually do. There's some room for improvement and everything, but we have a mandate from the Supreme Court, and even though that didn't give us a dollar figure, at least we're going to, from my standpoint personally, I feel like I don't have any option. I mean, this is what the rule, whether I agree with it or not, is rather immaterial. So I'm going to support 2410 as at least as initially written, not knowing what amendments will come in there. It looks like to me a fairly good bill. Kind of bridges everybody. It's probably not enough in some of your minds from schools. In other people's minds, it's too much. So we're in a tough situation with that. But I think we've actually had, from the House side, we've had 127 bills. We really have jumped out and done a lot of hard work and got things done. The Senate, I think, had about 39.
No, it's more than that.
More than that? Okay. Well, that was an earlier time. But, and I'm not sure that having a large number of bills is a good thing, because every time we pass something, we regulate somebody. And so sometimes I think by doing less, you're probably working smart, so I'll kind of, I've got some other things, but I'll let Bruce, maybe while we're on education, if he's got anything to add with that.
Thank you. The three things we have to do is create an omnibus budget, create a school finance plan, and create a tax plan to fund everything. Those are three things. We have to do those. And like Doug said, there was 6 or 7 different bills, House bills, at least that many at one time in the House, and it was House Bill 2410 that has emerged to be the front runner of those bills. I don't know how, in the House side, how out of those 6 or 7, this one made it this far, but that's the one that we're probably going to wait for it to come to the Senate rather than the Senate creative plan and send it back. And I don't know why we've had the block grant for 2 years, and supposedly have that block grant, according to the governor, so that we could build a new finance plan in that 2 years, and the legislature's done nothing, absolutely nothing in those 2 years. And so we wait to what? The veto session right now, the last 2 weeks of our session to actually look at and create a school finance plan. It makes no sense. There's a lot of things that doesn't make sense to me, and I'm sure to you too.
Yeah.
As freshmen legislators, there's things that just doesn't make any sense. But with the block grant, coming out of any kind of a block grant, there's going to be winners and losers. And anybody that thought differently, because the block grant wasn't based on anything rational or fair in school districts, it's just a set amount of money that, and some districts got more money than they should have. You've got these issues all across the state where Hutchinson in these 2 years have lost 500 students in their district. That would be millions of dollars in state aid. Bayshore, Linwood, for example, in these past 2 years have gained 500 students. And the block grant kept the amount of money the same to all the districts. So it was unconstitutional when it was passed. And the Supreme Court ruled twice, 3 times on it. And they're going to rule on whatever we pass. But it'll be in June, when they get the bill, they won't even look at it until June. And they might say it's okay, or might have to make some changes to it. So,
Yeah, we had that June 30th deadline.
yeah.
And my opinion, and I mean, you wouldn't run a business like how we operate.
No.
It's pretty frustrating. Looking at things we have, my opinion, we should have had some summer interim committees working with it. And I will say, I will give credit to our House leadership. The House jumped out with a Senate or with an education committee from the very first day. The Senate kind of delayed a little bit on that, but
Delayed nothing, they stopped it.
yeah.
The Senate leadership told the Senate Education Committee, you're not going to work on a finance plan. We're going to create our own Senate Finance Task Force. And didn't even start it
Didn't
until
start until way late.
way late
Yeah,
session.
so, if they'd have worked something in the summer and had some of this thing, so when we got there, we would have had at least something to lay out on the table to be able to look at without having to be behind the 8 ball when we get into all this thing. We had the recession bill that went through. Actually, that we had about 3-4 months that come in revenue above and beyond what we thought. So that brought that 350 million down to 250 or 280, whatever it was. And the House had a joint conference committee with the Senate, and to fund that, basically most of the money's coming out of the investment pool, which was a good thing. But the House was very adamant about, in the conference committee, of delaying that CAPERS payment again. And beyond me, And I'm a very fiscal conservative, but it's just beyond me to have the smoke and mirror to borrow money from capers, pay 8% rate, and then say, I don't want to raise taxes. Because what is happening is we're utilizing other tools to restore money that, in my opinion, isn't fair. A good example of that is fees. Fees on hairdressers, dog kennels, dog inspections, the LLC. If there's an LLC now, instead of the $55 a year, it's going to be $200 a year per member. So if you've got 5 people in that, that's going to be a pile of money for, you know, each year annually. So they're putting a burden through increasing fees, and part of that is to restore the 4% cut that went to Medicaid a couple of years ago, which everybody has told me, don't, whatever you do, get that, you know, get that, instead of getting $1, they got 96 cents, which doesn't sound like much. But to nursing homes, 4-county mental health, which is huge in big in my district, the director told me I'm going to have to lay off 20 people if we don't get that restored. So they went with the process of a fee increase on the managed care organizations that would jump that from 3.31% up to 5.77%. And that's going to be the money that will be to restore the cuts that we had in Medicaid, which is a reimbursement to doctors, providers, hospitals, nursing homes, some really
Mental health centers.
yeah, it really, that will really help us, I think, a lot. And I think we passed that. I don't think the governor hasn't signed it yet. I don't remember. And we've been out of session, so I get a notice from Hallberg News, and they usually keep us up to date. But we believe he will. And there's probably enough votes in there to override, because that is real important. Because all my providers are saying, you know, that's the most important thing you can do. So what's happened to Bruce and I is this can has been kicked down for, and I kind of wrote a little article about it. I don't know how many got it. It's like a Kansas Flinthills forest fire. That, you know, you build litter out there, and if you don't burn it every other year or every 3 years, by the time of about 3 or 4 years, you've got about 6 to 7 tons of fuel out there. And then they're giving Bruce and I a garden rake to stop that fire after this can's been kicked down for so long. And so we're in a situation, our back's to the wall. It's forcing me to vote for probably a tax increase that I don't want to do. I mean, quite frankly, I just going to have to hold my nose and do that. But somehow we got to right the ship. And I don't believe cutting. It seems like cutting. Everybody says, well, cut. I don't know if cutting's in it up there in my short time.
We've cut, in the past 4 years, everything has been cut.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Governors cut, legislators cut. So now, do you cut more? That's the issue. Our social services can't stand another cut. We have the court system and court workers, judges system, they have had a raise in their income, their earning power, for, was it 8 years?
Yeah, 8 years.
8 years, nothing.
And
You know, and we're the worst paid in the country. So Kansas has cut enough. There's talk about going back to a tax plan just like we had in 2012, which would, in 2012 we had $700 million in unencumbered funds in the state of Kansas, and then that's when the shot of adrenaline and the new tax plan came from the governor, and the legislature bought it. It didn't work. That for whatever reasons, and there's several different reasons, it didn't work. It didn't create the jobs which were going to create the revenue to make up for the tax cut. It sounds very similar to the plan unveiled by our president. I think they should really look at Kansas. It didn't work for Kansas, but maybe it's different on a national level. I don't know. But we have to fix that. And then, as Doug said, we're going to have a tax plan that, it's hard to say what it's gonna look like. That,
I voted against the first one because it went retroactive. I didn't like the retroactive portion because, you know, I talked to some accountants and employers that would have had to went back, refigured their withholdings and all that, and it would have created a nightmare. And I basically voted against that initial tax plan, which was still holding at, what, 2.7%, I think, for those
2.7
under 30,
right.
and still lower. Actually, the flat tax entertained a little bit. I would have actually supported that. I don't know. I hear the story of the working poor. I guess I get tired of hearing it. 30 years ago, I was working poor. I was a biologist for the state of Kansas Fish and Game. I started out at about the same salary as a starting teacher. So those of you that are a teacher know what that's like. Except I was working 12 months out of the year. I mean, I couldn't get a summer job very easily. I did not get any extra money for extra degree I got. So my tenure was a little longer. I have a hard time having empathy for this because I've worked basically 2 jobs all my life. And so I struggle. And that's my problem. I'm not saying I'm right, but I struggle because I've always worked very hard. And when times got tough, I kicked into it with another job. However, being said that, I realize that there's some people that physically or have health issues that can't do that. And we need to help take care of them. But I would have actually probably supported the flat tax. That would have been around 5% across the board, depends on how the deductions. And a lot of that's smoke and mirrors. The governor's so-called tax cut also took away a lot of deductions.
exactly.
And you take somebody that has over that 7.5% of your gross for medical deductions that may be running 15 or 20,000 with a diabetic issue or whatever, they actually made more money before the cuts.
Right.
They had more spendable money because that was a deductible. You know, I'm very adamant about keeping the mortgage deduction. Personally, I know I've been as a young family and starting out, that is a very important issue to have that mortgage deduction. So it's hard for us to tell which is the good thing and which is the bad thing. Because if you cut my taxes but increase my fees on everything else and make me pay interest on a CAPERS delayed payment at 8%, I'm not an accountant. I don't ever want to be an accountant. But a lot of times those numbers don't balance out in my mind. And it's hard for us, and even though we got good support within our legislative advisor statutes and legislative research, it's still sometimes those numbers are hard to get a firm grasp on.
What questions do you have? Sure.
With the school funding being so tight, there's House Bill 2008 for requiring seatbelts on school buses.
Right.
Do you really think that's going to pass?
It's on your side, it's a House
Our
bill.
funding's so limited already in the expense for this, and from reading the House bill.
I can tell you, it does not have my support. If it
Yes.
gets to the Senate, I will be lobbying hard for not having it.
And according to the House bill, they want all these seatbelts installed.
Right.
But they're not going to require the bus driver to make sure that kids are seatbelted in at all times. You know how kids are if they're not.
That's going to be a tough call how that's going to go. I mean, it's not, I mean, you kind of understand why they want to do it, but the practicality and reality of doing it is, I mean, I grew up in a rural school, rode a bus for a lot of days, and yeah, there's an occasional rollover, and when that hits the media, everybody trips everybody's trigger. Well, we ought to have seat belts, but I don't think it'll probably have the support. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, even the seat belt bill that kind of supported the safe, that increased the fine and the safe program with the schools.
In the school zones and in work zones.
Right. Even that got quite a few negative votes.
Right.
Simply because, and who knows what, when you vote somebody, vote. I see people up there, and I'm already starting to see, they vote no on everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been watching these guys, they vote no on everything, and gals, and I don't know why they're there. I mean, in reality.
You're right. It's easy to vote no.
And, yeah, and you can look at my record, I voted no, I don't know, here's all the bills, and I think there's about maybe 10 no votes. And the rest are yes, but, and I'm a conservative. I mean, I really am. I mean, I'm gonna tell you that up front. And I campaigned that, you know, I felt like the schools probably had adequate money, it just needed to be shuffled a deck a little better early. And, you know, I've since realized that I wasn't, and I'm fairly ignorant on the schools. All I do for the schools is I sent my kids, which is a long time ago, and I pay my taxes every year. Other than that, I'm pretty well clueless. I got this crazy sheet that shows all these weightings, and it opened my eyes. A Philadelphia lawyer couldn't figure that out with all those weightings and the confusion there of everything. And I'm sure all of them are justified. But you know, it's tough for me as a legislator I was on 4 committees. Water is probably my expertise. Natural resources, being a retired wildlife person. I'm comfortable there. You're not gonna push me off in a corner where I don't know pretty much what I'm talking about. Schools, I'm easy to fool. You know, I serve on the Health and Human Services, and that's been brutal. It is a brutal committee. Agriculture, I enjoy that. I got a pretty good knowledge of that. Financial institutions and pensions I serve on. I went to a bank and I borrowed money. I have very little knowledge of financial institutions, but I am a retired Capers employee, and I believe when we have a contract with our employees, we need to honor it. That's just that simple. Right, wrong, or in between. And so I'm a very staunch supporter of Capers. That was part of in the conference committee on the rescission bill. The House was not willing to delay that Capers payment in the Senate and the House Conference Committee, so we kicked it back. We didn't agree. And the Senate, their representatives, they agreed that, well, and they found the money. So I think that was a good thing for the schools and anybody that's in the Capers system, because the state shouldn't be using that as a bank. I mean, it's just that simple. I mean, that's our money.
It's actually been done many years ago.
Years, yeah. And both governors, I mean, Democrats have done it as bad as
right. It's been years, and that's what's created the problem. It's not that Capers isn't funded enough or has bad investments, doesn't have the money. It's the unfunded liability that is talked about, and that's the amount of money that's necessary if everybody retired today. What is the unfunded amount? And that was created because the legislature didn't want to make the statutorily required payment on an annual basis. And so for years it went without making it, period, and created this gap. In recent years, they've attempted to close that gap, and there is a date out here that the gap will be closed. The governor's plan would have pushed that date off 10 years. It would have made that, it would have been unfunded for another 10 years, but in roughly 10 years, that gap will be eliminated and it'll be completely solved.
So you said it's 8% interest for the Capers.
That's a state.
That you're right.
Yeah, it's a state thing.
So question, we've been downgraded 3 times, the state of Kansas, for
Right.
our buying power. So is that one of the reasons why we're dipping into Capers?
No,
Okay.
no. We actually established the own rate so that we're incentivized to pay it back sooner.
Okay.
So if we have good revenues, we're going to pay that Capers debt off sooner. Yes. No, we created the 8% as an internal thing, had nothing to do with market.
Okay.
Roads, highways, there's other things.
I have a question
Sure.
that really doesn't really apply too much for now, but when our state first voted the lottery in,
Right.
it was to go to education.
And it does. Well, it goes to the general fund. It goes to the general fund, which
And
funds
then where
everything.
did it go? But it was supposed to go,
Well-
and that's why a lot of people voted
Yeah.
it in, because it was gonna go to education.
Yeah, it does in
In an indirect way.
in an indirect way, just like your tax money. When you pay income taxes, it goes to the general fund, and a large portion of the general fund is education, a little over 50% of the budget. So,
But it's not earmarked like people, when we were told to vote on
That's what
it, we
we
were
were
sold a bill of goods, bottom line. It should have, a lot of good Christian people would have never, ever voted for it had it not been devoted to education. I can guarantee you that. So, we were led astray, and that's a bad deal, and I guess that's maybe the reason people don't trust it. Like Bruce said, it does go into the general fund, and eventually some of it will get to education.
Yeah.
But as far as taxes go, and I pay taxes, and I don't have a problem with it. My father always told me that what we pay pays for the grandkids to go to school. It goes down like domino effect.
good point.
And if we don't have more taxes so that we can cover our bills, what's gonna happen? The kids are the future of not only the state, but the nation.
Yeah, you're right.
And you've got to have the tax money to do it.
Well, the governor went in with Kansas with two agendas. One was a roadmap to Kansas to take Kansas to a zero state income tax. And a lot of states have that. And it works. Now, in areas like Nevada, there's another resource, gambling. There's other areas, Montana's the same way, North Dakota, I think, and South Dakota have no state income tax. So it does work in certain areas. And ironically, if you look at growth from businesses and people going into those areas with lower taxes have a higher growth. So the governor's plan, philosophically, could have worked. In my opinion, it was too much, too soon, and then the economy stalled out. I have Chautauqua County, the entire county, it's almost exclusive energy related, oil, and we all know, and the commodity prices. I'm getting $3.40 for a bushel of corn. So consequently, that kind of stalled the governor's plan down. Now, was that the only reason? No, they should have backed up a little bit and admitted that this isn't working, we need to tweak it somehow, and it was basically too much too soon. The second thing he had was the Kansas Water Vision Plan, and I'm very, very familiar with that. I serve as chair of the Verdigris Watershed RAC, and have been involved with water most of my life. That could have been the one he could have had a statute on the lawn. However, he chose not to fund the water plan to the tune of $6 million for the last almost 9 years. That money has been swept. So, it'd be like me going to church for 20 years and never putting $1 in the offering plate. And, then all of a sudden wanting other people to put in more. And we was going to raise taxes on western Kansas, fertilizer tax, because the irrigation is at 85% of the users. In eastern Kansas, where we have surface water and the reservoirs, we were going to raise the rates on the assurance district, and it would have raised water rates for a lot of cities. And basically, the farm groups got in and just absolutely killed it, just like a light switch. And they had a valid point. They said whenever the state of Kansas puts their fair share in, we're willing to put our fair share in. Until that happens, it's not going to happen. So
Doug said something very important. 85% of the water usage in Kansas is for irrigation.
yeah, particularly
It's
western.
not people use.
Well, it gets to that indirect. It supposedly feeds people. And I sat in on that committee, and the big issue said, well, we're already paying more because let's say as an urban person that has very little farm knowledge, if I hear the word that farmers are using 85% of the water, I think, well, they should pay 85% of the cost. I mean, that's only logical. User pay.
Well, how much did they pay now?
Well, not as much as they probably should, but at the
They
same
don't pay
token, they griped and said, the farm groups come back and said, well, irrigated land in western Kansas is about $15 to $20 per acre higher in property taxes, and it is, compared to dry land. So they said, we're already paying more. So it's this deal, Paul Harvey, the rest of the story type issue, that sometimes when you make a decision, you have limited knowledge. Bruce and I, theoretically, not that we make always good decisions, but we have a lot of knowledge base that's available to us about the whole picture. And a lot of times when I was sitting out there, I was the same way. And if I depend on the newspapers, I'm in real bad shape, because I get just a little snippet of what they want you or I to hear. And it's not the whole story. But, you know, the governor could have done that, but he chose not to. And for beyond me, I cannot understand why. And we fought real hard. The water in our state of Kansas is very important. The Blue Ribbon Task Force, I mean, 20,000 people across the entire state sat in on public grassroots meetings. And I called them constituents. They were people like you that had a concern for water, and just like the water out of El Dorado, you know, lake. And we need to have a reliable water source for economic lifeblood. They created a Blue Ribbon Task Force. That how do we fund it? The very Cadillac portion of it, then 1/10 of 1% of sales tax would have been devoted to water. There was a recommendation for a 4-cent a bottle for every piece of bottled water, and that would have been equal across the state for the most part. However, if you stop and think about that, that's about $1.20, $1.50 for every little case of water you carry out, which is for those of you who drink, I drink pretty much zero bottled water. My bottled water is in a Diet Dr. Pepper. Now, I'm not saying that's good. At the same token, the rest of my water I drink out of the tap. I mean, but, so you see the things that we have to deal with and make a decision based on maybe a limited amount. And I really want to hear from people that are certainly in my district or even this area.
This is what's fun about being in the legislature, because Doug has expertise in the area of water. And I've called him because some of our overlapping communities are facing water issue problems. We talk about, you know, Severy and Howard, Moline, and Elk City, and those places. So it's good to have people with different backgrounds in the legislature. And on the other hand, it's interesting that some of the people that are elected have no skills whatsoever.
And sometimes that's
they're there because they're electable.
Yeah.
And they have somebody behind or some group behind them that puts them there. And that's the sometimes frustrating
I have to
part.
laugh. My favorite comment is, how does people get so old and know so little? And then I think, well, I'm talking to myself when I get in a judicial committee or some other committee where I don't sit on, I have to rely on maybe somebody like Bruce that I can trust his judgment that sits on that committee, because I don't like to read legal statute. That's not my favorite pastime. And so I have to, in a matter of maybe a day, I've got to get up on that bill, and then we deal with amendments.
Right.
And we get on amendments on the floor.
Oh
Oh my God, has this been an education for me?
Me too.
I mean, we'll have 3 to 4 amendments, sometimes I don't even want them voting on.
Well, in fact, I'm going to talk about one, because we passed both the House and the Senate. A bill left the Senate, and it had to do with repossessing liquor and alcohol and selling it.
Yeah.
And then it comes from us, it goes over to the House, and in the House they amended and put in what we're commonly called as the uncorked bill. So that grocery stores could sell strong beer. And that's where, I mean, it didn't leave the Senate that way, but it came back from the House that way in a conference committee, and it stopped amendments, because it was, you're going to either vote this up or down, and no one could amend it, which was a good thing, because I'm sure that somebody would have amended it so that the liquor store on 45th Street in Topeka would have been saved and excluded, or, things like that happen all the time. But that's how that happened. And by the way, that had to happen for the grocery stores. It really did. April 1st, 2019 is when this goes into effect, that strong beer will be allowed to be sold in grocery stores. Liquor stores will be able to sell other items other than liquor. There's a limit to what they can sell, so they can expand their market too. That had to happen because grocery stores in Kansas are limited to what's called 3-2 beer, and 3-2 beer is going away. So if we don't do anything, then none of the grocery stores, Quick Trips, convenience stores will be selling any beer whatsoever. So we had to make that change.
And see, I voted against that, and I'll tell you why. And this is kind of comical in some ways, how we get hung up on things. Liquor stores are very regulated, and if they sell ice, they got to have a separate cash register. They got to, because of the antiquated liquor laws. Now, the law, liquor store beer, is up to 6%. It isn't 6% in most cases, and in most research, for the average 150-pound male, it'd take 11 beers to get them drunk on 3-2 grocery store beer, as we called it, versus 10 beers for liquor store. Because most tests they've done on 6% has been in the neighborhood of maybe 4%. It's very low. I voted against it simply because places like Casey's, they're an out-of-state corporation. All that money will go out of state. I wanted to keep it locally from I try to be religious. I'm not perfect by any means. Morally, I could have voted against it, of not expanding it from that standpoint. But really, that wasn't the issue. I didn't want to impact the mom and pop grocery stores and have money going out of state. I wanted to keep, because those mom and pop liquor stores, they're hit up for baseball teams, local stuff, support a lot of things they support. So that was my rationale. Now, you are the only people that probably know that. If you read the newspapers, you wouldn't know those things. The reason why, little things, why Bruce may vote against something or for it.
Right.
And unless you have the opportunity, and I think it's the same on the Senate, we have the opportunity to explain our vote in the House. We also have an opportunity to change it, and which is kind of scary. We can vote. They'll ask, does anybody want to explain their vote? And they go through that. Well, no. Does anybody want to change your vote? Well, I can look up on the board and see all my buddies that voted yes, and I may have voted no, and I think, well, maybe I voted wrong. And it's kind of a weird process, but and however I vote, it goes on record. These are all the yays and the nays. All of you are available for me. Bruce got the same situation in the Senate. You can see exactly how we vote. It's televised this year, first year, a lot of our committee meetings. I made a couple statements that setting grandma out on the nursing home and getting unpaid for 6 or 8 months on Medicaid is bordering on criminality, and heads should roll. About the second day I was there. And I'm not never one to back away from a good fight, and I open my mouth a lot of times and when I shouldn't. But the bottom line of it, I got some results. Within about 3 weeks later, the KDHE called me and said, we've now set up a team of KDHE people to work with 12 nursing homes across the state so that they get their money, make sure that it doesn't fall through the cracks. 6 to 8 months. When I can take my visa and push a button and have a payment in 24 hours. And a lot of these local ones like Pleasant Valley and Sedan, their local vendors wouldn't even charge to them. They'd lost their credit rating in the nursing home because of the state of Kansas. That's criminal. As far as I'm concerned, whether I like nursing homes or not is immaterial. Whether I like schools or not, when you're withholding payments and you're obligated, it riles me up quick. And that, we shouldn't be doing business like that.
Other questions? Sure.
What access does the public have to research? And the reason I ask is it 2 years ago where they were wanting to consolidate schools? Because I did some research on the internet. I found some articles they were wanting to consolidate our rural schools. And there, I did find some research that said it would actually save more money to actually break up the larger school districts. It would save 11 times more money because there's so much overhead as far as administrative and then the facility size and things like that. So what research is used to determine these bills to consolidate?
Most of the time, there's none.
Okay.
Most of the time, it's a story that goes to a particular senator or representative or a couple of them, and they co-sponsor a bill because that's their mission. They decide, this is what I'm going to do. And then they try to get research to support their position. So there's no research that is looked at first and then bill.
Yeah.
It's really a story, then bill, then research to support your position.
So it's not unbiased at all?
No.
Well,
No.
it can be. The legislative research department is unbiased.
Yes.
They are very unbiased, and they will, when we bring a bill in, they'll take it to the reviser statutes. And the legislative research, we may do some research on that, what's feasible here. Now, obviously, you're seeing in 2410, there's some indications down the road. School districts with less than 260 students would need to obtain approval from the State Board of Education for their bond issues for any new school facility. Now, to me, that's telegraphing a message that somewhere down the road, and I'm a product, I graduated in '64 from Wayside High School, just between Katy and Independence. In '68, that school was gone. There's still people still bitter over consolidation.
There will not be a consolidation.
No, not this year for sure.
There won't be.
Well, it just seems like it's cyclical.
Oh, it's always, but again, it's somebody brings up something that they believe is right, and that the legislature's not going to do a school consolidation bill. Not going to happen.
I mean, it's a tough situation. I mean, I hear issues like what that Marshall Alvarez study that indicated
Right.
that the school districts would be better off if we had one health insurance provider financially. There's a lot of variance there.
Well, they failed to realize that they were pushing all the savings onto the teacher.
Yeah, but at the same token, the school districts aren't equal. They provide a lot more for some districts than the others. Now, here's my point. Having worked 28 years for the state of Kansas, we had a statewide universal health care plan. The person who worked in Hayes, Kansas was covered under the same plan as I was working out of the Chattanooga Independence area. And it functioned well for us. Now, the districts have taken it upon themselves for the boards, and of course now is not the time to change with the recent Obamacare because it just kills you because of the deductibles and the good plans and the Cadillac plans are gone. I mean, so you need to keep those old, and there would be, and it would be borne on the backs of some of the teachers. I paid $600 a month for the state of Kansas plan after I retired, and $600 a month for my wife. So I paid $1,200 a year or a month for both of us. Now, I know there's some school districts, our county and Montgomery County has one of them $70 a month for family.
Really?
It's unheard of. I mean, it's one of them Cadillac, but it's the way they can pay their employees $10 or $12 an hour. Because as I get older, I've got, my wife is a nurse practitioner, and she doesn't, I'm not a very uncompliant patient. Imagine that. She doctors me, or tries to. I have a diabetic issue that with my prescription plan, I pay $400 a month for Trulicity for one shot a week. And that's not counting my metformin. So, the older I get, and I'm still working half-time as a consultant, I still farm, I still raise cattle, I've got some rentals, and my wife is working.
So I like to hunt and fish.
And I like to hunt and fish, that's a bad habit, buy guns. And, but at the same token, if I have a health issue and can do nothing but work at remote, that $400 a month is gonna be pretty significant. And that's a huge issue, that healthcare for even people that had a good professional job. And, you know, probably teachers, even though they're not paid as well as they should be. I knocked on doors in small towns, and some of the better homes And I would expect that because they're educated people. Some of the better homes and vehicles were from teachers. I mean, and that work for the school district. In some of these real small, what I would call real poor communities, like we say, like Leon.
This is a, you know, this district, Doug's district touches 10 school districts. My district touches 36. That's just the nature of senates. They're bigger than representatives.
67,500 people for Bruce, 22,500 for every House district.
We have about 20% of the population in this area receive food stamps or some assistance. So it's a pretty high number in this district. So that's a significant number, and that we've got to take that into account. You could tell that I can't speak on the House, but there is a lot of collaboration. It seems like when you read the paper that we've not getting anything done. We've done a lot, and we're working together. There's no bitter fights. It's, you know,
If there is fights, it's usually between the leadership.
Oh, leadership.
The rank and file people get along.
Yeah.
The recession bill passed the House by 108 votes. Our chairman of the appropriation, who's been that way for 8 years, said he has never seen 108 votes. And this is the Republican caucus that we caucus every morning generally, for at least on the House side, and the Democrats caucus every morning generally on their side. But he said he's never seen 108 votes in the past 8 years for any recession, any budget bill. So I think that's a good evidence that at least we went up there with the idea we're going to try to fix something because it's messed up. I mean, we went up there with that idea. Now, whether we're going to be successful remains to be seen, because I've certainly got an education, and I want to hear from you because it helps me vote. And I won by 70% in my district. And first timer, that may have been just because I was the first time to throw all the bums out. I don't know. But at the same token, I was pretty upfront how I campaigned and let everybody know. And sometimes I get comments, well, I'm your constituent, you need to vote this way.
Yeah,
well, I beg your pardon sometimes. I want to hear, but I have a lot of constituents. And when Bruce and I campaigned, and I know Bruce said this from the get-go, we're probably going to have to cut schools some, we're probably going to have to raise taxes. I mean, we kind of said that's probably the reality. Now, to what degree? Maybe we won't have to cut schools, I don't know. I mean, it's looking more positive than I've seen from a standpoint of the school than it probably has in a lot of years. We come real close to overriding the governor on a couple issues. Another ugly thing that I'll bear in mind.
We would have got it if it wouldn't have been the retroactive.
Yeah, if it hadn't been retroactive, it'd happen. That's the reason I voted against it. And quite frankly, I've been a loyal Republican all my life, and it just really bugged me to vote against mine. No matter how wrong people think it is, it really kind of bugged me to vote against it and the platform. And you have to realize platforms are important. What a Democrat stands for and what a Republican stands for kind of sets the stage for that. You know, having said that, we are getting along very well. Medicaid expansion. I'll give you a good shot at me. I voted against it. I'll tell you why I voted against it. Able-bodied people 19 to 64. Now, how many times did you hear that in the paper? You didn't. It was because the disabled, the elderly, or whatever. Medicaid expansion would have done nothing for those people. It was the working poor. And I said early on, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, I was the working poor. And how did I do it? I pulled myself out. Nobody gave me. So I had very little empathy. And I'll be right up front. And I felt like we did not have the money. The Supreme Court had not given us a decision yet on what they were going to do with the school. And I felt like that was more important than the expansion. In every state that has expanded it, they come out, they kept using this term woodwork, woodwork effect. I couldn't figure out, I built my own log home and thought I was halfway a decent carpenter, but I couldn't figure it out. Well, the deal was, people come out of the woodwork when they get something free. And they do, in most cases where they thought it was gonna be 180,000, like we're thinking in Kansas, 170. In most cases, it ended up being 240,000, which increases taxable. But it cost you guys 60 million, roughly 60 million, 57 million estimated per year. The state of Kansas costs to implement
Not the
Medicare.
first year. Not the first year.
Yeah. That, not the 27 million, Bruce. That's half a year.
No, not the first year. When it costs
Well,
them the
that's
first
from
year.
that's from July 1 till December, 27 million. I sat on that committee. I heard it all.
The upside, and I voted for it, the upside, and this is where we're still friends.
Yeah.
He campaigned that he would not support Medicaid expansion when he was campaigning. And I campaigned saying, this is a federal program that's available to us. We haven't been taking advantage of it. There's over $1 billion that would come to our state in a year's time. So there would be, Eureka Hospital over here desperately needs the Medicaid expansion. Clinics, mental health centers, et cetera, because those people are going in, getting the treatment and getting the service, and no one's paying their bills. But we have a different.
Five hospitals in the state of Kansas would get 80% of the money. All big cities.
However, the
Most of the
research
rural,
says
I was a poster child.
it benefits rural hospitals
Yeah,
more than
it does
urban.
something. I was a poster child. I was born in 1946 in the Independence Hospital. It was closed. That was the biggest farce that ever was. The fact that the reason the Independence Hospital closed because of the lack of Medicaid expansion. It was entirely management. Entirely management. Medicaid with expansion would not have saved that. But that's not what the media told me.
It probably prolonged it.
It may have prolonged it by a few months.
Yeah.
If that. It was a management decision. They spent $1 billion at Joplin. Those of you who want to go over, drive to Joplin, look at the Mercy Hospital, just south and west of Joplin. The Independence Hospital wouldn't even cover the landscaping over there. They got overextended. The bad thing, 190 good-paying jobs left Montgomery County, and that was terrible. I mean, good-paying jobs, we lost that. I think, and I'm not a medical expert, but I think sometimes our hospitals overbill. Arc City and Winfield's probably two examples, 8-10 miles apart. In the 2000s and the late 90s, they competed for all this high-dollar imaging equipment and for business, and what's happened? Population has shrank, and people, I told my wife, I said, if something serious happens to me, don't mess with Independence Coffee, I'll be straight to Bartlett. And that's not a good hometown philosophy, but there's only one of me, and I'm going to protect it.
Anything else before we wrap up?
With the Medicaid expansion that you were looking at from the healthcare side, what was that going to benefit with those hospitals, just out of curiosity?
What would it
Because-
benefit?
Well, because working in the hospital system,
Right.
there's a tremendous amount of Medicaid abuse that happens.
True, we know that.
And so
Yeah.
when it comes to financing that particular bill, I work in the emergency room. I work in a very large emergency room. And unfortunately, with the Obamacare system that came in, what was supposed to help decrease some of our
Right.
abuse in the emergency room has only escalated that.
Yeah.
And when people, I think, in my personal opinion, have no responsibility for co-pays, you have a tremendous abuse system.
Right.
And when you're talking 19 to 64-year-old individuals, roughly in your words, where is the responsibility of the public when it comes to those Medicaid expansions
Well,
and the abuse system?
we're-
Because I hear
first
all
off-
the time, I do hear.
First off, the
The
hospitals
hospitals
have to
charge.
serve, right?
Correct.
You have to
serve.
Especially-
They can't refuse.
Especially the
Yeah,
emergency.
and that's the issue. They have to serve. We know they're coming into ERs. We know they're coming in for mental health services, and they're getting the service, and no one's paying the bill.
But they're not. The thing is with the healthcare system, especially the mental health care, I worked I've worked rurally in El Dorado at SBA in the emergency department. I also work at Wesley in the emergency room. And even in Wesley, with all of the services that we have in Sedgwick County for those mental health patients, they're not getting, you sit on mental health patients for hours and hours and days trying to get these services. And so when you cut 5% of those mental health services, you can't.
There should be a
Can't
copay.
accommodate those patients, and it's kind of a big system that's being lost in the cracks, because you have a lot of those healthcare patients that have no place to go.
Right.
And we're trying to transport patients, or just trying to find placement for patients that we're sending out of state for mental health services.
Well, it's reimbursement.
The Medicaid reimbursement would help the mental health centers and mental health services, just like it would any other provider.
And see, the 4% reduction will help those people, which is what I did vote for. And I supported that, even though it's through a poor system of raising fees. The problem with the system is the fact the hospitals, the medical providers do not get enough of a reimbursement
Right,
for their
correct.
services.
Correct.
I know that well. My wife operates a clinic, we own the clinic,
Right.
and a lot of times it's a loss. And she knows that before she ever does it. The only reason she does it is you're a long-term patient type thing.
Right.
And that's the only reason. And the hospitals that has really made a big deal for them, because they have so many people. And here's the other deal, reason I voted against it. $27,800 for a family of four, which is 133% of the federal poverty level, plus 5%, that's around 27.5, would be now eligible for Medicaid expansion had it went through. Now, that person and that family is probably paying $20 to $40 a month premium.
Right.
And with a $5,000 deductible. And I can remember, and I had 15, and I couldn't even hardly come up with a $1,500 deductible. And what's going to happen? These are the woodwork people. They're going to say, you make them eligible. Wow, I don't have to pay $20 to $40 more a month, and I go on Medicaid, there's no deductible. That's a no-brainer.
But doesn't that cost the state of Kansas a whole lot more money? I mean, I guess that's what
I don't know.
my
No.
question is.
I can't tell you that.
Medicaid doesn't. The most that Kansas pays towards a Medicaid claim is 30%. So the federal Medicaid is taking at the worst case scenario, they're picking up 60+%
Right.
Well, no, they have two rates. Under the Medicaid expansion rate, the new rate, had I voted for it, it is currently, at January 1 of 18, will be 90/10. So, for every dollar spent, the feds reimburse them 90 cents. That sounds like a good deal.
90% in the first year.
First year. Now, it'll go down maybe to 80% over
Right.
time. However, the current disabled people, the people and the elderly, the reimbursement rate is 55
Right.
cents versus 45 cents it costs the state of Kansas. Now, you're smart people out here. You figure that out, and we're already backlogged near, well, it was 3,500. They're working on that. They can't get to under the existing Medicaid system, which is a 55-45, and they bring in this new system. Able-bodied people are going to, and Brownback is 100% right, they're going to go to the front of the line, because you know as well as I do as the state of Kansas, if I can get 90% reimbursement, I'm going to move those heads, so it costs me a dime. They're going to the front of the line.
That's part of our problem is that the governor has privatized the
Oh,
Medicaid management.
it's a
You
mess.
can't, in Kansas, it's not called Medicaid, it's called
Can't
CAN
hear.
Care.
Can't hear.
And that's part of our problem. The management of the system is creating this huge backlog, people not getting their services.
We have the three managed care organizations, United and Human Pack out of Sunflower, that I think are now the administrative fee, I believe, is 31 million
It's huge.
versus back when it was SRS, state employees, about 11 million. So it's more than tripled. It hasn't been cost saving. Then you have a clearinghouse under that they have to go into, and I've been told there's only 2 fax machines in the entire state, and a backlog, and people that don't have a clue,
Yeah.
don't have a clue even how to answer a question. And we get people working at nursing homes, been there for 30 years, been processing these. they make a phone call in and start asking questions, and these people are just absolutely clueless.
We anticipate, if it doesn't get better, the can care system will be gutted next year.
Yeah. It was a terrible experiment.
Yeah.
And it could have and should have been good, but
Yeah.
it isn't. That's our biggest obstacle I see, is fixing that system there, because that's the one thing that we had been doing it pretty well right.
To me, that's more important than expanding Medicare.
Back to education, sorry if I can.
No, you're right.
House Bill 2270 missed the veto override by 3 votes. In Senate,
Yeah.
okay?
And one of them is now treasurer.
And so, I mean, that money was over 3 years, I believe, and now we're with House Bill 2410. That's $750 million over 5 years, where the 2270 was $932 million, $937 million, something like that over 3 years. That seems like quite a bit, a pretty big jump or to go back to, and over 2 more years other than 3 years. You know, why is such a huge jump to get 3 votes? I guess is my question. Why do you think that's changed so much for 3 votes?
Well, number one, Supreme Court didn't give us a number.
Right.
That was a bad thing in a way. I
Now-
mean, that put,
A state board has kind of recommended 890.
Right. and quite frankly, I don't care, you guys are a lot of your education, that was ridiculous. We don't have $1 billion to fix the school system in the state of Kansas right now. I mean, that was like me wanting to drive a Cadillac, and it's not realistically, economically possible at this point in time. And I campaigned on the thing, let's get out our bailing wire, let's keep this thing fixed to where it's workable, and wait till times get better. They will get better. I mean, I have faith that they will get better. And, you know, I've looked at state spending, and every time we get up at $500, $600, $700 million reserve, we kind of spend like drunken sailors, and it goes down to 8 or 10 million. Now we're in the zero. We're in the red. And so we need to correct that. I feel like the 2410, the House had a ton of retired school superintendents, school teachers, and principals that got elected. So probably more sensitive to, of course, Bruce on the Senate side that, you know, has some background. They're familiar with that. I mean, they know what the nuts and bolts of it. So I think there's at least an intent and a desire to fix it to where it's at least workable. And I think the $200 increase on the base student aid was a good concept of that. And plus it'll tell the court. I would love to be able to, as a legislator, to get the Supreme Court off our back to where we can get something that's workable. How long we've been in litigation with the schools versus
15
funding, 15, 20 years?
But your question is about a tax plan.
Yeah,
And
essentially.
that essentially, and the tax plan, we haven't passed, neither House or Senate has got a bill on the floor on school finance. So the tax plan, like was said, the reason we couldn't get enough was the retroactive part.
Retroactive portion.
So there will be new tax plans. There's already 3 of them on the Senate side that, and we took up the governor's tax plan, killed it on the Senate side, so just beat it up badly. So
You think the new school finance plan comes out before the tax plan?
I think so.
I think so.
I think we'll go
so.
back to work, at least on the House. We'll go back to work. We're going to talk about it tomorrow, Sunday. That's going to be the
Senate
major topic.
Special Task Force meeting.
This is a
meets
special meeting just on-
8:30 Monday morning, so
Just
I
on 2410.
don't know.
And I think we'll pass the school finance, and that's probably the right way. We pass what we think we need, and then we'll be able to come in and say, here's, because we want a reserve. We want a rainy day fund, and that's only good business. So then we'll pass a tax plan, hopefully, and it'll be brutal. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of fighting and wailing, gnashing of teeth on who's gonna vote.
In 2012, the tax rates were 2.7 for the lowest, 6.2, and 6.45.
Five, yeah.
And now, we're not close to that, and we're not generating the income we need. The flat tax plan that was slaughtered in the Senate didn't generate enough revenue. So we'll have another tax plan.
Do you think we'll go back to a 3-tier system?
I would like to, but I don't think our leadership will let that type of a bill get on the floor.
What's just for a show of hands? You guys tell us, this is your chance, we got a pretty captive group right here. What would you support? And, you know, because we need to hear things like that. Because sometimes you hear only the extreme. On the Health and Human Services, I was getting 200 emails a day. The bulk of them was from Johnson County.
Did you get emails on fracking?
No, a couple.
Yeah, I got so far about 2,000 on stopping the fracking in north of Cassidy. So I checked into it. This is where you call people, and so I called people to find out there is no fracking north of Cassidy.
Right.
They're putting a disposal well in. But I got 2,000 emails to stop the fracking.
No, it's just crazy. I mean, people get on, there's advocacy groups.
Yeah.
On gun control, on campus gun control, that somehow you give them your email, it's the same form letter and email
Everyone looks the
from
same.
everybody.
Yeah.
It'll have your email on it, your email.
I don't respond to those.
I just kind of hit, there was a good button on your computer called delete. If it's you're from my district, I will make every effort to answer you. Whether I agree with you or not, I will make every effort. And email is the best way. But I guess I'm still going to go back to that. What kind of a tax increase would you support?
I think it's
You've been
that-
pretty quiet.
Yeah, I have. I've been listening because I'm not well educated on things like this. Hence the reason I'm here.
Nor are we. That's the reason I'm asking.
And I like that. That's great. I'm glad you're asking. But I think I would need more information to be able to answer your question. Is kind of what I'm getting at, because I'm sure we all come from different areas and different backgrounds and different jobs. So I can't answer your question. Just raising my hand to tell you I need more information. before-
And you're right. We're the ones with the information. We know, they tell us. If it's going to be a 4.6, they'll tell us how much that's going to generate.
Yeah.
And you can't possibly know that. And that's why we're sitting there.
That's the reason I call it a republic.
Yep.
Do we have access to any of your legislative research for public? Is there where
Yes.
we can go online to do that?
Yes, you can go to the Kansas Legislature. The website is public. In fact, most of us look up the bills the same way you would.
Yeah.
You go to that main website, you can find your legislature, you can find certain things, and
Type in a bill number,
right,
Senate or House,
and then it'll have supporting research. You can,
fiscal notes.
yeah, fiscal notes.
Fiscal notes.
So, okay, so I was looking at some bills, and it says refer to the Kansas Department of Health for further research. So when that research comes back in, it'll be posted there, and I'll be able to
They
view
usually
it?
are. You can't. I can't
Okay.
tell you for sure that they are.
For example, health and Medicaid expansion, one of the representatives questioned the fiscal note that was prepared by KDHE, big time. And, well, the budget director, Sean Sullivan, right?
Yeah.
Questioned his numbers. Now, it's kind of easy to predict what dollars and if raises in taxes or stuff, how much money it will do. But on other things, it's very difficult to predict how your reaction is going to be to that individual thing. Because how you react may be different than mine. So that's the reason why it's not an exact science. And, but yeah, they had them redo the numbers and they come back different. Well, now what kind of confidence do I have? I mean, that don't help me, or it wouldn't help you, but they come back a little different because supposedly they hadn't considered this or that, you know, and so we're we're subject to those same things like you are, and it's real difficult for me in good conscience to vote for something I don't feel comfortable I'm not playing with a full deck. And that's a tough part of my job. And being new, it's worse. Very, very difficult. And I struggle. I spent sleepless nights, and I went home to my wife and I said, I'm gonna have to tear my heart out and only vote with my mind, because emotions will never be general. Emotions will never be general. So, you know, it's hard. You hear horror stories of people falling through the cracks and dying, and because of bureaucracy, and you get so frustrated and mad that.
Especially now that we're part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I've been in education for 20 years, and things have changed significantly in that 20 years, and probably even longer than since you kids have been in school. And I find myself becoming more and more moderate, probably because of the things that I see that have happened in our society. That isn't necessarily kids' faults, but it's just our society. We have a lot more single-parent homes. We have a lot more grandparents and distant relatives raising kids. We have all kinds of mental health issues that have just, you know, continued to increase. And so educating a child is so much different than it was even 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So when schools are saying, yeah, we need money, it is because of the uniqueness of our kids anymore has changed so much. And so, and then on top of that, you learn things like small business is considered 500 or less employees. Well, I've never thought of small business being 500 employees, you know, and when you hear that companies who are set up to have 500 or less employees or break themselves up so that they have that, so they get the credit for a small business tax break, that bothers me. I mean, I think a small business, 25 or less employees, and 50 at the most. But I'm more of a 3-tier tax guy just because of the things that I see and I'm exposed to.
Well, my wife and I benefited from the LLC exemption, but she's small. We have 7 employees. We've created jobs. And why in the world, had I been a legislator, I would have never voted for that without a job creation skin in the game. I mean, I believe an employer should have to have skin in the game if they're going to get something. These people that are going out and creating an LLC and no employees just for the avoidance is ridiculous. And that's not, I'm for providing the most affordable essential services for state government, that includes schools and everything, based on the broadest base of the tax support that we can have. I mean, and that at a broad base, not specialized group. And it seems like we've kind of got everything in specialized. We exempt this group, we tax that one, we change things around. And yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's changed just looking at all those weightings. You know, how many miles you drive a bus. You know, I mean,
A lot here.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought? And there was one in there, I think, on 2410, declining enrollment. I think it was in there twice. Some kind of a weighting factor, maybe a typo, but I mean, are we rewarding people because they're losing people? I guess some of the times when they move out, it's not as a school administrator, it's not your fault, or a board member.
Maybe they lose because of the board member.
Maybe.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I
I
appreciate you coming out this morning.
Nasty, rainy, and this is how I relate. I like the small group, and you've been very civil. There has been quite a few. I do appreciate that. I have not done everything right, nor will I, and I will make my share of mistakes. I try to have a reason for everything I do, and I'm willing to explain that. I've tried to keep an open mind about it. You know, obviously I have my biases and my preconceived things I was raised up with, as does Bruce. And we have to overcome those sometimes and vote for things that we know is probably best for the constituents. And if I can get information from you guys and listen to what you want, it gives me a better, because I'll get beat up if I vote for any tax increase. I can guarantee you that.
Sure, we all will.
I mean, I'll get beat up. I've already got people, there's already been, my former replacement wrote a pretty nasty letter in the paper about some of the other people, and chairman of Butler County hammered me real hard on the first tax bill, just bringing it to the floor. I voted to bring it to the floor, but then unfortunately, I was gone. I had a funeral that next day, and so I kind of looked like I was getting out of it, but it wasn't. But
I don't think anybody really.
so I got beat up real hard. I mean, I got a nasty letter from the county chair, who I know well and I respect, and I love her to death, and it really hurts me personally when I have friends and close acquaintances that bloody me.
You can leave your emotions out of it, remember?
Yeah. You know, and I had a young the lady in Independence, a teacher named Lee Shepherd, that my first wife and I got a divorce, and my son was out of control. And I'm not one to have a lot of patience with stupidity, and probably wasn't a good parent at that point, but I mean, I was solid. This teacher took him from probably what could have been jail and got him into cable vision and the news media and the job he's still working for Cable One. Totally turned him around, something his mother and I could not do. Every time I see her on the street, to this day, I compliment her. I ever voted against Medicaid, I got a real nasty gram letter from her that just tore the heart out of me. Of all people, I mean, that bloodied me for voting for something that she probably knew half of what I knew or less. And, you know, I explained it, but still, those are the kind of things that I'm sure they hurt Bruce too. But, you know, they really hurt when you get people you really know and respect that bloody you.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the opportunity. I mean, you've been a great group. Thank you for the civility, and I've heard horror stories in some other forms. Would have been kind of ugly.
Mostly in Johnson.
Mostly in Johnson County. Thank God we're not there.
Yeah.
Well, you know, as a Kansan and somebody who's lived here all my life, and my mother was diehard Kansan and loved Kansas history, and you know, nobody likes to pay taxes, but I think Kansans have always been willing to pay them for those services that we need, and to invest in our kids and our future, and for our elderly and the things that they need. So that would be the only thing I would say is that
We'll have a plan.
Yeah. And the one thing I'm learning, if we screw it up this year, we'll come back and fix it the next. Or the next.
Another opportunity.
So, I mean, that's reinforcing, and there's, you know, I think sometimes when we've done that already this year, fixed some things that was messed up the year before.
Yeah. Continue that.
Yeah. Bruce sent around that email, if he, hopefully he can give me a copy and get on your list, and like I say, you're close enough to the district, and let me know how you feel.
Thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.